Is it more work? I think it's about the same amount of work either way. The biggest thing that affects native plant gardens and regular landscaping in general is invasive species. In general, I would say that native plant gardens tend to attract more wildlife, and so unfortunately that wildlife was probably in a bad place, eating some bad things, and came to our pollinator garden and defecates and leaves the seeds of the bad guys behind here. And so in general there's maintenance both ways, because both types of landscaping are subject to invasive species either way. Oh.
You know, when to tidy up. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So as far as timing and native plants go, doing a native plant garden, you really should keep up on the weeds kind of throughout the growing season. In the wintertime, obviously, there's not much to do with weeds, but as far as planting them goes, some plants enjoy being planted in the springtime, whereas others do better in the fall. You kind of have to do a little research. I can't get too specific as to which ones do what, but there's lots of good information out there on that. As far as the maintenance goes, the one important thing to consider with pollinator gardens and native plant gardens is that insects overwinter in them, and they use them as their homes throughout the growing season. And so if you're going in and you're cutting things back, and especially if you kind of cut things back in the fall, you've then gotten rid of where the insects will overwinter. Now, some people will cut them and just leave them in place, and maybe that's okay. I think the jury's still out on that. But in general, a lot of the stems of the wildflowers that we use are hollow, and so solitary bees and other pollinators will climb in there for the winter time to have some protection as they overwinter. And so
I'm still learning about those types of plants that have hollowness. So yeah. Are you talking like ironweed, or what types?
There's a lot of them. Joe Pyeweed, ironweed are a couple that are big plants that have good hollow stems on them. A lot of the native grasses are used that way by insects. Purple coneflower, Amsonia, they all have little hollow stems where things can overwinter.
When you planted here at Ashburn Village, when did you plan that? Was that always a spring planting each time, or does it matter?
Well, as a landscaping company, you work when you have work. It's that simple. We warranty everything, and so I always like to say to the homeowners, don't worry, everything's warranted. As long as you're trying to take care of it, we'll stand behind it, kind of thing. But that being said, you really don't want to plant plants in July and August. It can be a rough time to get plants established because it's so hot and there's not a lot of rain. And so generally speaking, springtime or fall is the best way to get going. But again, some plants, trees are best to put in the fall, but a lot of herbaceous material likes to be put in the springtime so that it can root before the winter comes on. And not only can it root, but herbaceous plants need to store up energy. And so they photosynthesize through the summer, and they put all that energy into their roots. And then in the fall, their roots expand, and over winter they get deeper rooted so that they're stronger plants for the next year. So in general, herbaceous plants like to be planted. There's always exceptions to every rule, but herbaceous plants prefer the springtime. Woody plants prefer fall.